It's great to be here tonight at UMass Boston, and in this room, though I have PTSD, the last time I was here was for my debate in my campaign for re-election back last fall. It worked out, but it's really nice to be among all of you. And I want to thank Dean Cash and Chancellor Newman for their commitment to the public interest and to public policy and all of the great work that goes on at this critically important institution that I, for one, am very invested in supporting. So thank you both for what you do. Thank you for your generous and warm welcome. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on any number of matters of public interest. I also want to thank Jackie and NEWIEE and the whole team at NEWIEE for the work that they do day in and day out. I asked Jackie how this organization came to be formed, and she talked about what was happening 11 years ago, and Cheryl LaFleur, who I had an opportunity to speak with a while back, what was happening at that time. And I think now more than ever, the work that this organization does and the network that you all create for one another is so, so critically important. I was delayed, as you know, coming up to the stage, but that was because Melissa Hoffer, who together with Rebecca Tepper leads our amazing Energy and Environment Bureau, and many people are here from our office tonight, but she put in front of me, this is a new research article from folks at Northeastern, Elizabeth Allen, Hannah Lyons, and Jenny Stevens. I've only skimmed it, but I commend it to you because I think it really ties with this moment that we're in and the notion that women's leadership in energy really is so critical to bringing about the transformational change that is needed here and across the world. And obviously you all are so integral to that. So I'm really interested in reading their comments about an energy democracy, about energy justice, and how really, in the words they cite at the beginning of the article, the words of former Irish President and UN High Commissioner Mary Robinson, who said that climate change is a man-made problem and must have a feminist solution. So you'll have to get another copy, Melissa. I'm going to keep that. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about climate emergency and the transition we need to make right now to a clean energy economy. The crisis we face is, of course, existential. No other country is going to solve this problem for us. And even while our federal government hands control over to coal lobbyists and climate change deniers, the world does continue to look to us for global leadership. And we need to demonstrate the path that transitions our economy away from fossil fuels by transforming the way we power our communities. Decarbonizing, this is a word I've come to know and learn. I practice saying it. Decarbonizing, because I'm going to say it a lot, is one of the great challenges and opportunities of our time. Now, when I was running for Attorney General, and then when I became Attorney General back in 2014, one of the first things I did was bring together what was previously separated our Environmental Protection Division and our Energy Division, which did all the great ratepayer work. Because it was my view that unless we thought about the synergies between these spaces, we weren't going to get to where we needed to be. And so that's why we created, for the first time, an Energy and Environment Bureau, housed everybody together, and I think it's made us smarter, more strategic, and hopefully has made us more of a leader in this space. I am really, really grateful, as I say, to the leadership of Melissa Hoffer and Rebecca Tepper and the entire team, and I just want to acknowledge and thank my staff who is here tonight. So many of you are here tonight. I also want you to know that I have the opportunity to host the National Association of Attorneys General this fall here in Boston. And we've made the focus of that meeting energy. And I know there'll be invitations extended to many of you, but that's how important I view this topic. I also want to just acknowledge all the support that you all make to ensuring that women have a voice and a seat at the table. And I'm struck by a few things. I'm constantly talking about this a lot. The actions by some of the southern states and legislatures earlier this year with respect to restricting women's access to health care got me really fired up. And so I was looking at some of the statistics, and women, of course, are more than half of the population in this country. They're just under half of the workforce. They hold the majority of college degrees and graduate degrees. And so when I think about women's access to reproductive health care, I also see it as an economic imperative, which is why some of you may have heard me talk about this at the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, as well as at AIM, because this is not only a matter of empowering women and recognizing the dignity and worth of all of us, it's actually how we're going to get to better policies, better solutions, and a better economy for all. And so it shouldn't surprise you that running my office, the majority of attorneys and staff are women and serve in the majority of management positions, including first assistant, chief deputy, state solicitor, head of our state police, and other management roles. And again, that's not based on preference, it's based on competence, and I think the results speak for themselves. It's also true that I think in these positions you have an opportunity to support women through your own workplace policies. And I know many of your organizations and companies do just that. One of the things I did immediately was to institute paid parental leave in my office and also train everyone on unconscious bias. And that's something we regularly engage in. So tying it back to this wonderful group, we know that study after study has shown that women are more likely to understand the impact that climate change will have on their lives, and they're more likely to worry about what that's going to mean for future generations. And even more importantly, women know what to do. We know the game plan, we know the blueprint. Every day we see cities across this country adopting their own new Green New Deals. And every week we see hundreds of municipalities and businesses signing new clean power purchasing agreements. Our clean tech community continues to roll out new programs and policies that are making real differences. Ultimately, running our economy on clean energy is a win for everyone. It's good for consumers, it's good for climate, it's good for public health, it's good for the economy. And one of the things I also talk about is the role that clean energy has in being a job creator, especially in this region. I explain to people I am forced to sue Donald Trump and his administration time and time again because the actions they are taking actually undermine the interests of Massachusetts residents and our businesses. And one of the things I explained that Massachusetts, and Dean Cash will correct me, but I think we have over 100,000 clean energy jobs and growing right now in this state. That's twice the number of coal jobs in the entire country, representing an $11 billion industry. The solar and wind industries are creating jobs 12 times faster than the rest of the economy. And there are now more Americans working in solar energy than oil and natural gas extraction. Think about that. Clean energy is increasingly the cheapest energy choice for families and businesses. And while we focus on expanding the clean energy economy, we remember why we're doing this work. Because we only got one planet, and we really have a climate crisis on our hands. So here's what I think we need to do. We really need to focus on three sectors: energy, transportation, and buildings. And I just want to put out a few ideas that I think we see as needing to happen with the urgency that the times require. New England has gone all in on energy efficiency and demand response. Our programs are working and providing significant savings for residents and businesses. Even with all these new electronics and the growth of electronic vehicles, we're using less energy in New England every year. ISO forecasts that by 2027, the 6 New England states will use less electricity on an annual basis than at any point since 1996. And there are a lot of wonderful people from ISO New England here. They can check the facts on that. But that's what I'm told. Solar, right? Let's look at solar. Today, 160,000 New England homes and businesses are generating their own solar power. Altogether, generating about 3,000 megawatts of clean solar power. That's twice as much power as the Brayton Point coal-fired power plant generated before it closed. So we've got to build on this success. Offshore wind. It's been in the news a lot lately, and I will tell you I'm deeply concerned about what's happening right now with respect to permits by the federal government. In New England, we've recognized the enormous benefit that this resource will bring to our region. Rhode Island and Connecticut have all executed large contracts. New York as well has awarded new contracts. Here in Massachusetts, we expect to have 1,600 megawatts under contract this year, equaling 13% of the overall electricity generated in Massachusetts. My point is simply that this is happening now. And this is a sector that's going to produce homegrown electricity and jobs. It's going to change the way we power our state, and it will do so carbon-free. Of course, there's so much more to do to combat the climate crisis in the energy sector, and I know that that's so much of the work that you all are engaged in every day. Some of you are focused on electrifying the heating sector and bringing new technology solutions online, like heat pumps, to the market. Some of you are working on storage, figuring out how we can use storage to provide electricity when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining. And some of you are working on our energy markets and the role the markets play in ensuring that we always have reliable and low-cost power that meets our decarbonization imperative. I'm confident that the people in this room working in our vibrant and creative energy and environmental communities will get us there. Now, transportation, and I know that this isn't something that people want to talk about, let alone do anything about, but unless we deal with transportation, you all know we're missing the boat. This is the sector that accounts for the greatest percentage of greenhouse gas emissions. Huge issue. We need to electrify, and electrify all over the place. Cars, trucks, buses. The good news is that our region is cooperating on policy development to accelerate electric vehicle deployment. The New England states and others have a collective target of ensuring that by 2025, 15% of new vehicles that are sold are electric. Massachusetts has committed to the goal of having 300,000 electric vehicles registered in the state by 2025. And the transition is happening. In 2018, sales of electric vehicles in the United States increased by 80%. But putting cars on the road isn't enough, obviously. We need to do more. First, I think we need to be smart about how we make this transition. For instance, what does it mean to the power grid to have everyone coming home from work and charging their cars at the same time? How can we use the storage capability of electric vehicles to lower prices for everyone? Second, we need to act on a regional commitment to design and implement a cap and invest program, like RGGI, but for transportation, which we call the RGGI Transportation and Climate Initiative, TCI. TCI will cap transportation sector carbon emissions and invest the proceeds in low carbon and resilient transportation infrastructure. That includes things like investing in public transportation, which is so vital to so many of our communities, and making our cities and towns walkable and bikeable. It means investing in good, affordable housing with access to public transportation. Third, we need to target electrification of trucks and buses, and we need to seriously pick up the pace here. Before 2030, here's what we should have. All purchases of urban transit buses need to be electric. All shuttle buses at the airport need to be electric. And we need to help our towns and cities move to electric school buses. Transportation, hugely important, not talked about enough, not addressed enough in terms of an articulation of a plan. But again, unless and until we deal with this sector, we are not going to get to where we need to be. Finally, I want to talk about buildings. We need to address the building sector. There are 124 million buildings in America. Again, that's what I'm told. I don't know who tallies these things up, but just trust me. These buildings use 75% of our electricity and are responsible for 80% of use during peak times. More than 80% of these buildings are 20 years or older. I should know. I work every day in like the oldest and probably least energy efficient building in the Commonwealth. And some of you do too. To decarbonize this sector, we need to do a few things. Make buildings more efficient and flexible. Employ smart and more carbon-friendly technologies. And connect buildings to the grid by two-way communications. And we need the right policies in place to incent and reward high-performing, efficient buildings. But in taking on the climate crisis, we also need to ensure that everyone can benefit from our efforts. Last year, the 4th National Climate Assessment found that low-income communities in both urban and rural areas will be disproportionately impacted by climate change. I don't think you need to look beyond the pictures on the front pages to see what is happening in countries, in whole continents, that is feeding so much of the geopolitical discord that we are dealing with globally. And so much of this tied directly to climate change, the droughts, the food shortages, and the like. You know, some of you know my office has spent a lot of time dealing with the border policy and suing to stop policies that I think are un-American and unconstitutional. But you think about the root of some of these issues, right? And you have to think about this issue of climate and what's really going on and driving some of the dissent and discord and desperation, frankly. Those communities have already higher rates, and I'm going to bring it back here. Having worked, I was head of the Civil Rights Division, and I remember, taking on bus idling in the city of Boston, and we know, what's happening with bad air quality in certain pockets and the disproportionately adverse effects for communities of color and low-income communities. There are communities that have higher rates of adverse health conditions, are more exposed to environmental hazards, and take longer to bounce back from natural disasters. These existing inequalities will only be exacerbated due to climate change. Thus, our decarbonization planning needs to be equitable. And there are some ways to do this. You know this. Programs like making sure that low-income communities get the benefits of solar generation through community-shared solar. Formulating electric vehicle programs that focus on transit and school buses, and doubling down on energy efficiency in low-income neighborhoods. My point is that addressing the climate crisis is our shared obligation, and our response must, in kind, be a shared opportunity. I want to thank you all for inviting me here tonight. I'm inspired by the talent in this room, and I look forward to what a feminist agenda might look like as we move forward in this space and try to tackle this problem in meaningful ways. I also believe here on the campus of UMass Boston, where I'm reminded of an old politician that once said, all politics is local. And I really believe that transformational change in this country is going to come about through the acts and engagement of all of us working in our local communities, doing what we can within our region. And I think that for a place like Massachusetts, and I know there are wonderful folks from across New England here as well, we've got a proud heritage of leadership, and there has been no greater time for leadership. The country and really our planet demands it. So thank you once again. We look forward to continuing to work with you.